Hello and good morning as it is now from what is a beautiful setting in Serpentine Woods above Kendal, and I'm here with two really good friends of mine, which is an honour to chat to them about their incredible film Thriving. I've got Don Bush, filmmaker, one half of the team of Land and Sky Media, and we've got the protagonist in the film, Clare Dyson, who's also the horseback adventurer. So welcome guys, nice to chat to you in our backyard.
Thanks, yeah.
So just tell us initially how the project started, how you came together, what was the connection, how did you meet each other, what was the first steps, if you like, on the film?
Yeah, well, we knew each other socially for a little while before the film, but the kind of genesis and the initial ideas really came from Clare, so I'm going to pass it over to you.
I did a journey on horseback 4 years ago, and it felt like something that could work well as a film we could do something positive with and have a positive impact with. So I went to Dom and Hel just to have a chat with them and see, after they'd made a film called Naught But a Fleeting Thing, which was a farming film, and I was just like, it was such a poignant and beautiful film. I just felt like they would have the skills and the understanding that you need to work with the farming community, and would be able to capture the lakes being based here, and that we'd be able to work together and make a good go of it.
And as far as the farming communities, the farmers that you met, were they people you knew already, or did that sort of evolve as the journey progressed?
I knew some of them, and actually you knew some of them as well, didn't you? And then some were new. So some of them I'd met on my previous journey around the Lake District. But then, we all had quite a few contacts, and then when you speak to other farmers and say, who do you think would be good for this sort of film, and they'll recommend other people, and before long you've got a list of like loads of people you could go and speak to. So and then we selected 8 out of those, out of that list really.
So Dom, the sort of connection between regenerative farming practices and the sort of slow pace of adventure that, you know, Clare's synonymous with on horseback, how much of a challenge from a filmmaking perspective was that to keep, well, to keep the pace right within the film, because I think that was done beautifully, because it was a gentle progression and journey, and B, how logistically, how did that work from a filmmaking perspective? Because obviously you couldn't be with Clare for the whole duration. Yeah,
so Clare was out for 30 days, and you know, that is a massive chunk of time for me to take out, given that I've got lots of other work going on and things like that. So we had to kind of pick quite carefully the best places for me to catch up with Clare. And you never quite know how it's going to go. I mean, I've done a lot of these kind of adventure style films where you're following somebody, tracking them. But it is a kind of process of changing and adapting, and like things going wrong and you having to sort them out as you go, and it was especially challenging, I think, because like having worked with the farming community here quite a bit, if you find somebody who's willing to talk about what they do, quite often they're like really excited to talk about it, and they don't get a lot of opportunities to kind of sing about what they're doing. And so you turn up on a farm and, you know, what could be a kind of 30-minute interview turns into like 2 hours of chatting, and I then have to, you know, cut that right down into like 2 or 3 minutes per farmer, and then combine these kind of dual narratives of Clare having an adventure, getting to know Clare as a character and going through the kind of the emotional journey with her, but then also interjecting with these little character parts from all of these farmers. So it was really complex. The edit was really complex, and there's so much stuff that we couldn't put in there, and even people that we couldn't put in there, because there was just tons and tons going on. And I know you found that quite full on, didn't you? Every day, like, you know, the subject matter is quite tricky. Biodiversity loss, climate crisis, etc. And just having conversation after conversation after conversation, and needing to hold all of that, I think was quite hard, was it?
Yeah, definitely. And handling a horse that you know hadn't done this before, and just keep on top of like I don't know what I was doing, you know, just by camping out every night and everything. So although I met up with Dom, I was on my own majority of the time, and then so keeping a hold of all those stories whilst you're sort of managing an adventure, and the weather wasn't the kindest. So,
a lot of spinning plates, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's full on actually. Yeah, I'm excited about getting out again, but without having to do any of that stuff.
So, talking about the farmers that you met, obviously it is a complex topic and subject, and you know, obviously in our region here, agriculture is intertwined into the community. So, was there any reticence from some of the people? Because obviously not everybody sits completely on the ecological or regenerative fence, if you like. So was it a difficult process getting the people to open up to maybe not all the perfect farming methods that they adopt? Or
I would say that we mainly spoke to people. The majority of people are adopting regenerative farming methods, and some of them have been doing that for quite some time as well. So they're pretty happy to talk about what they're doing, and some of them are like really hands up, like it's not, you know, I'm not perfect, you know, and they're not saying like, oh, everyone should be like me. They're much more humble than that. Yeah. So actually, you know, people don't necessarily, in that community, don't necessarily want to put their heads above the parapet, because they get shot down, and that's part of, you know, what we're trying to get to is the fact that these people, you know, it's good to make something of them, because they're actually leading the way in so many ways, because they're farming food, but they're also doing stuff for nature. So they're in this like perfect sort of sweet spot. So really trying to get that across. So people they were happy. The people that we chose were really happy to talk about that to a certain extent. And then there's one of the farmers in the film is got a bit of a point of difference, really, that although he enjoys the farm, enjoys the bird species and the biodiversity on his farm, he's not actually doing anything for them. He is headlong into farming a lot of sheep, and so he's a bit of a point of difference, really. And a lot of people, when they saw the edits, they were like, "You've got to take him out. It's too we just take him out." And we were like, actually, he's a really important part of the story, because not every farmer is by any stretch of the imagination. These regenerative farmers are much more in a minority, and that's much more a sort of normal sort of thing. But things are changing, and that's what we want to really breathe life into and shine the spotlight on, is people that are doing things differently. So there's not a huge amount of people that are doing things that are damaging nature. There's not that sort of narrative in there. It's much more about what people are doing to help nature as well as produce food, and that's the key thing.
Some of the best practices, erring on the positive, if you like, really. Yeah.
I think a lot of farmers are understandably quite cautious of media people, cameras. You know, it has been turned into a kind of cultural kind of fight, I think, in recent years, and it can be a little exhausting because there's no answers. You know, there's a million questions and there aren't really any solid answers.
It's really complicated.
But it is really critical, I think, that we convey some of the nuance, and we convey the humanity, and we understand that there's people involved in all of this. You know, the way that we overcome challenges often is by connecting, you know, is by understanding each other. So fueling this fire of like biodiversity, great, farmers, bad, you know, that sort of stuff was never something that we were willing to do. And I think we tried to balance that really carefully in the film, of like having some counterpoints and showing some nuance, and, you know, showing some complexity as well.
Because, like, You know, like you say, travelling through North Wales a few months ago, I was astounded to see some huge banners in some of the farmers' fields, you know, stop rewilding now. So there is that conflict, and Claire and I were just chatting on the way up. You know, we are living in times of environmental eco-conflict when you see people on the front line, people stopping traffic, people protesting. You know, we're in this wave of transition, I think, with conflict, and inevitably that is going to happen on our own doorstep, in our own countryside, and with the farming communities. So
I think, and that's a really key thing, is like for people to understand. You know, we're really comfortable with using the word regenerative farming, but people are like, well, you know, what even is that? But I think, put very, very simply, you've got areas, people that want to talk about rewilding, and on the other end of the spectrum, there's intensive farming, and it's like they're so polar opposite, and we're not talking about either of those. We're talking about this sweet spot in the middle, which incorporates creating habitats, not using chemicals, having less animals on the land and rotating them in certain ways. There's all sorts of things that come into what you might call regenerative agriculture and farming, but it isn't rewilding, and we've got to create our own food in this country, because we can't just export it to other countries, and they have the problem of like nature disappearing and poison rivers. It's like we have to do it here, and we need to do it responsibly. So it's about us producing food, as well as making sure that we provide enough habitat for nature to thrive. So
the economics about it, like Don mentioned, about people, you know, making their living livelihoods at stake. And when we see the national news, all these great projects about meandering rivers, like Lee Schofield's project that's had a lot of news and success, how do they balance the actual food production side, the economics of it, versus the land management, just like nurturing nature? How do they balance the business side of that, so they can basically, you know, pay the rent, pay the mortgage?
Well, it's a really good question. The economics is a huge part of it, and I'm not an economical whiz by any stretch of the imagination, but I know that some people are diversifying on their farms. So you've got John and Maria at Nibthwaite, and they've got all sorts of things that they're doing with accommodation on the farm, but also they now have a shop, and they're producing products from the farm, and they've also got cattle and sheep and hens, so they're really spread out. So they've diversified loads, and that gives them a really solid base. And then other people who, you know, are you know, they've got a huge amount of debts, but they're trying to work with the systems that the government are putting in place to try and support nature-friendly farming. But that's very complicated. And I don't know what other people are involved in schemes. So Richard Maxwell, for example, is involved in the Wild Ennerdale project. So there's schemes involved as well. But I know that other farmers are actually coming together on a landscape scale, and this is where it gets really, really smart, is you've got farmers collaborating over a huge swathe of land, and then they're able to draw down funding for that as a group. Right. So that makes huge sense, because you know, birds and, you know, animals and plants don't have any recognition of any boundaries. They're just in the landscape. So that works on a landscape scale, and that's really smart. So it's a variety of ways, but there's lots of different approaches to it. But and if farmers are sharing that information and showing that it can work, and it can work financially, it's not that, you know, they have to take a massive hit on it. They might have a bit of a drop for a while, but then you actually come out of that stronger and more resilient for the future anyway. So yeah.
I mean, the only thing I would add to that is that we need political support, and we need farmers to be supported to do what we're talking about now, which is regenerating nature, and we need to put the right politicians in place that are going to sort that out. And
So, as a filmmaker, and the use of film as a tool for amplifying that message, have you had any feedback from the wider farming community or the public in general on the impact the film has made? Are people who maybe were not really on that agenda suddenly quite interested? Has it made any mind shifts, do you think?
Well, I think the next month or two will show us a lot.
Obviously when it goes live, yeah.
We've done quite a few screenings, and I think largely the audiences were familiar with regeneration and you know, kind of on board. There are some screenings coming up that it's just purely going to be kind of more traditional farming community, and it'll be really interesting to see how it goes there. And I don't think we'll really know what waves it's going to make until it goes out to the public and it's going to be kind of free online for people to watch. Yeah, I don't know.
Be interesting to see the feedback.
Really interesting.
I think, and some of the farmers certainly that we've spoken to after the film's been shown, and so some of the feedback we've got in emails and things afterwards have been, you know, it's been like, thanks for opening up the conversation, and you've really captured some of the nuances of it. It's not just us projecting what we think about farming as non-farmers, because, you know, we're not farmers, and we wouldn't be so arrogant as to say like it's like this. It's very much about listening to what farmers have to say, and engaging them on. It's got to be about listening, and it's got to be empathetic and compassionate, and that's what you need in that world at the moment, I think. And so I did have a point, but I've forgotten what it is.
It was good though.
It was good.
It was so good.
I just think, you know, from a connection perspective, and you touched on that, you know, connection is what you're both about, and I think certainly from this film you've done a brilliant job, and the platform that it creates for future debate. Well, let's wait and see, but I think you've done a brilliant job, and you folks at home who are watching the film, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it, and yeah, give us that feedback. So thanks so much, both of you, for sharing a little insight into how it all happened.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Steve.
So I really hope you enjoyed that chat with Dom and Claire and that insight as much as I did. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and check out the link to the player. The film Thriving is free to view alongside other great films from Land and Sky Media, which I know you're going to love. Thank you.